My realtor, I would just, if you don't quit, top dog out there, I actually went off my thing.
I went over to see if I could.
That's it, I'm done. Yeah, so. Yeah, so that was pretty real. And of course, you were going, of course. Yeah. Well, a lot of people.
Unless you.
God, she is. I mean, I don't have a bad word to say about it, but I was a party.
Well.
Yes.
Because the dog has been gone.
But just not being able to you guys, I mean, your team is kind of way money business.
Howdy.
Hey, Rhonda.
Good morning. What the status is? I'm sorry. The buyer is listening. Buyer, they've asked for the status is. You guys are the same way. We never have asked.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Let's see that list. The bottom one.
Something else?
Personal page, business page. I think we do the email to your lead list or sphere, whatever. We mentioned that too.
Mention that too in the other listing promotion, or is it?
And advertising.
Oh, yeah, email it to your. Okay. Would we use MailChimp?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you really can have that up here.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the last thing we said, which was basically nobody would ever do this, but technically you can send a targeted email through the Chronicle to people who are in the market for homes and blah, 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 blah. People who are going to their real estate section and clicking through homes, but it's pretty expensive.
Okay.
I mean, it's something I would consider doing for like a Bell Heights or, 1035 Harvard.
Chronicle ads.
Yeah.
For like luxury listings.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Curious about that. Yeah.
That's like always 11. Yes.
This is how we talk about.
Everything's going. Every time, but the thing is, they didn't know it was too late. You can't do anything 3 weeks into a contract.
Because theoretically, they're about to want to either. But we know
And that sucks that you get the satisfaction, but it's not the satisfaction you want. Oh, wow. So he's, Doug is very young city, which is who I use. I don't know if it's probably, you get the email. When they send out about the meeting. I got it. Yeah, I know. So, he used to work for years and years and years and years. Now he's switched over to which is what I understand.
That's how I interpret it.
When you go to the business center, they can follow up with it. So I typically go and check the emails and I would go push one five. And you didn't use credit card anymore. They say the Western Union has, no, there was a Western Union before, but considered using it here in Mexico, they tried that. And they say, the same thing, you go at $7,000 cash, and you get up and hit the first day. Well, yeah.
I'm so glad we're having this topic because suddenly the appraisal topic is back in my life. You know, I mean, for a while, we
Hey Star, how are you doing? I'm doing okay. Just okay.
Just okay?
Yeah.
Having a hard day today?
No, not really. I just don't want to be I think this, oh, it's not picking up sound good. I just don't want to be at work today because David was out of town for 2 weeks and he just got back this morning. So I saw him for like 15 minutes this morning. Yeah. I feel like a teenager about it. Yeah. So you want to get together? We'll need like just 2 or 3 minutes, and I can even give you a call today just to talk about the weird stuff. Okay.
There's a guy coming in at 10:45.
Okay.
And one of my big problems,
And you gotta keep it.
that's the one that my client is furious at me.
They asked me. They asked me.
Yeah, I'm going to leave. I know.
For the humor, that's nice. The supplier friendly.
Yeah, I'm going up there. And that's why
One day when we were out,
I do.
I'm assuming you've done this. We're not gonna need more than that. We'll stop. She
I thought that was going to say.
I did like that. I'm sure you like it. I probably would have made it. No, okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Finish that, whatever breakfast you're getting. I think I'll go ahead and go first because we may end up longer than I thought on our topic, which is appraisals, but I'll get to that in a moment. So just want to remind you, kind of in the heat of the summer over here, it is going to be slower. I think I get this question about from 10 agents a day, and I get it from a couple of agents outside of the firm also, that it's slower. The number of appointments are slower. And I gave this bill again on the radio. I was on a radio program Saturday from the Realtor Rat Pack, whatever, but same thing. It's naturally slower in July and August. If we were just in a normal market, it would have been slower to begin with. The number of agents on vacation within our firm is near 50%. So when Melissa's gone, and Anne's gone, and Lily's gone, and they're in Cambodia and Thailand and Greece and Morocco and Aspen and the Hamptons, so the agents are gone, which is indicative that the buyers are gone also. So I think the number of agents and the number of buyers are, there's fewer of them in July, August with 100 degrees outside. Two, if you used to have 10 houses to look at, all of a sudden you have 100 houses to look at. It takes you 10 times longer to get through the inventory. So if you plop on your new house and there's 99 other new houses, they're only going to look at 10 or 15 at a time. They can't look at all of them. So it's going to take longer to look at all of the inventory. Thus, the number of showings would diminish because people are looking at house X, Y, Z, N squared, that sort of thing. So there's so much inventory out there that people are looking this day at this 10, this day at this 10, this day at that 10. They're not getting to yours until the 5th time they're going out to look at houses. So it's going, the number of showings is going to be diminished proportionate to the number of listings that are on that at any given time. So I just think it's naturally for us to be realistic that the number of showings is probably going to be down in July and August. Doesn't mean the number of sales are down. In fact, again, the number of sales was up 10% in May, over 10% over the year before. So we're selling more houses. It's just a whole lot more inventory than we used to have. So it's going to take longer to sell the houses. But I'm not going to log down there. We have plenty of videos on that sort of thing also. MLS Platinum kicked in July 1. If you've been on vacation and you come back and there's something not working quite right with your MLS, you just first check and see if you're a subscriber to MLS Platinum. If you're not a subscriber to MLS Platinum, your clients aren't getting the market watch and you're not having access to a number of the things that you always had before. So now it's a 2-tiered system. There's a basic level of service. There's the Platinum service. You think if you're a full-time realtor, you want to subscribe to the Platinum service, but that's up to you, says the federal government. One more time on these surveys, I I don't know how many times we have to have the survey conversation, but I suppose we need to have it one more time. I want you to understand, I'm on the planning commission, I see this every 2 weeks. It pops up. Somebody buys a house. They buy a house here on this corner. They use the old survey. They didn't buy a new survey. They start their house. They go up. They pour the piers. They get the first floor up. The neighbor then bitches because they're beyond the build line. And they're beyond the build line because the survey didn't catch the prevailing build line versus the deed, what was recorded in the deed restrictions. So they have this house that's midway up. They get red tagged by, the city of Houston because the next door neighbor called on them or whatever. And all of that is a result that the buyer didn't get a new survey. If they'd gotten a new survey, it would have shown the proper build line of where you could build the new house. So this house at the corner of 8.5 and Beverly is a good example of one that was up. They demoed a house, they drilled the pier, they put up the first floor, and the damn thing is 3 feet into the build line. And yes, they had to tear down that section of the house and push back their house 3 feet. If they had gotten a $405 survey, they could have gone to the surveyor who would have probably been held accountable and would have probably paid the $40,000 that they have to go spend to move their house. It's just not that easy to move it. I see this every other week on Thursday at 2:30 when people start building a townhouse and they didn't get the right survey and they built the damn structures into the build line and they have to tear them down and move them over. So if you represent a buyer, you would want to have a survey because you wouldn't want to let them use the old survey because the old survey, that survey is not accountable to the new buyer. That survey company worked for the old buyer. So you can't hold them accountable. Only hold the survey company liable if you bought the survey. So in any scenario, if you're the seller and you gave them this survey, then they're inherently in the legal world, they've relied on information that you provided. So we don't want to provide the old survey to a buyer if we represent the seller. We want the buyers to purchase their own survey in every scenario. There's not a scenario. So we have one, and our client is going to tear down the house anyway, so they didn't need a survey. Well, bullshit, of course they do. There's no scenario where the buyer doesn't need a survey. There's no scenario. There's no scenario that the buyer shouldn't buy the survey. So
we were suckered. I mean, why don't you go back and we suckered with the T-47?
The T-47 is not going to be held up in court.
But what I'm saying is, why don't we go back to the people to say, don't have.
We do, we don't.
We do. We haven't come.
I know that. I'm saying, no, I know.
Neutral.
I know the rule here.
Right.
I've done it. I'm saying, why don't we go back to track or whatever and say, take the T-47, this is not working.
The survey companies don't want the liability, so they're happy to let you use, and the mortgage company and the title companies all have disclosures, so you can't hold us accountable anyway for those sort of things.
So why?
We really either represent a buyer or a seller. If we're represent the seller, and the seller has a survey, and we sign a T-47, it makes the seller liable 2 years from now when there's a problem with the survey. Why on God's green earth would we want our seller to get the T-47? Never would we want a seller to get the T-47. There's no instance we would want the seller to ever sign a T-47.
But why do
If
they
we're
bring
the
that
buyer,
into this?
because they're trying to limit the lot. They have very strong lobbyists in Austin every 2 years. They're very, very, very popular people over there taking people out for cigars and steak dinners in Austin. And they are managed to get that language put into these contracts. But the realtor role, the buyer and the seller don't really have great lobbyists sitting over there in Austin, okay? Village Association has it, the title company has it, the mortgage company, they all have lobbyists. Who's the lobbyist for Joe Smith over here on Harvard Street? He doesn't have a lobbyist in Austin. Well, he doesn't know any better. What he's got is the single professional with a license who has continuing education, who should know whether or not they should do that or not. The only one in the transaction that has a license is the realtor. The licensed realtor who holds their license Boulevard Realty should never conduct a transaction with buyer and buyer survey. Never.
I think what she's saying is, why don't we go back to track?
I am trying to go back to the broker lawyer committee and just make it where it's not an option, that the buyer buys the survey, you know, it should be that way, but it takes a while to get through these. Yes.
Okay.
I want to get hung up here for.
No, just a quick question. Not negotiable, not gonna do it, buyer has to buy the survey.
Yes.
But the issue is, the old survey that they wanna use versus the new survey that they should be buying. Is there any, is there a difference between the old survey and the new survey?
Sure there is, sure there is.
Yeah, the new survey's got, the new survey's got the buyer's name on it.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
reliable.
No,
Yeah,
did
that's-
the prevailing lot size change or the build line?
No, the survey was
in the
in
last
there.
15, 20
Yes.
years?
Do you know when that building lot line was put in? 1993. You know when those people bought that survey? 2001 was the survey they were using for reference. Let's be clear. Survey companies make mistakes every
Oh,
day
they
too.
sure do.
We want to hold the survey company liable for the mistake that they made. Just like we can hold the title company liable if you buy a house and they didn't pick up one of the deed restrictions. That's why we have that thing called the title commitments. That's why we have a title policy, to hold the title company liable. I want to hold the survey company liable when there's an easement that nobody picked up, where there's a build line that nobody picked up, when they drop, you'd be surprised. So, there's lots of instances that I see now more and more and more. We've been talking about it for 2 years.
And the truth is, even those $400 surveys are not very good. And so if you have an issue, you always want to have the most current survey.
Technology changes, they're better and better and better at it. Survey companies are sometimes at odds, maybe this guy started here and worked his way, and this guy goes to sell and he started over here. Let the survey companies hash it out, but we want them to be the responsible party. We don't want to be responsible. Yeah, absolutely. It happens all the time.
There are a lot of times
I didn't get it
when the survey company, they just did one and they're willing to, for a reduced fee, transfer it over to
They
the
put it in the
buyer's name.
buyer's name.
Still willing
the
to
buyer
defend
has
it.
That's right. That's perfectly acceptable.
For $100 or
And they get it, and they're willing to put it in the buyer's name, whatever fee, I don't know what the fee is, if it's $1,000 or $1, doesn't matter to me, it's now the buyer's survey. That makes the buyer who's gonna be able to go back to the surveyor, not the realtor or the broker or the seller or one of these other entities when there's a problem over there. Okay, and same thing, I want us to be clear, if you're selling a house or buying a house, more importantly, in a historic district, and you're not overly familiar with the historic preservation ordinance, I want you to please get myself involved or get Kathleen involved. I spend a tremendous amount of time. There's no one in the world that's been to more historic meetings than I am that hasn't been on that commission. I meet with those people every day. I argue with them every day. I was down at 611 Walker yesterday with them. The design guidelines are, I serve on that steering committee. I was appointed by the mayor to oversee the design guideline process or whatever, and there's going to be ample opportunity for people in a historic district to make comments as the design guidelines are formulated. I want us to remind us again, someone, an irresponsible, stupid realtor, I won't even say who it was, let someone buy 424 Euclid, you just pull it up, okay? And this young couple who wants to live in Woodland Heights and just wants to have a family, that's all they want. They buy 424 Euclid, which is not the greatest house on earth, and they paid $450,000 for it last year. They hire an architect, they make beautiful little drawings, and they design the house, and they spend $30,000 on these drawings, and they submit their drawings to the Houston Archaeological and Historical Commission in December, and they are rejected. Said you need to redraw it, and they redraw it, a completely different house, spend $30,000 more redrawing a house. It was never going to pass the Historic Commission, so the only one making money in this transaction is the realtor and the architect so far. They resubmit, they get denied again. It's not remotely close. What they think that they want to do and what they can do is not even remotely close. They put the house back on the market for $450,000, and this young couple will lose $80,000 in this transaction in about 10 months. Okay?
Probably no more.
Because their realtor didn't give them very good advice about what they wanted to do and what was likely to happen in a historic district. You're just not going to be able to do that. So 424 Euclid, I don't know that we can get any better picture. I
But
mean,
next time they got denied, did they not, were they not given any reasoning why they denied?
Yes,
they're given reason, and then but they went back and they're redrawing what they did. So here's the little house. They kept wanting to have a yard and 4 bedrooms in this little bungalow. And when you have this 5,000 square foot lot, the only way to do that is to push the house all the way, because you really can't start here. You can start at 100% and do an addition. But you can't encroach into this section of the house and start your addition up here on the second floor anymore. Even though across the neighborhood you could have done it, the rule changes. Things change. You can't do that anymore. After the revisions in October, you're no longer able to really encroach into the original structure. If this was a porch that was enclosed in 1950, maybe you could take that off. But you can't start your addition except here. So the addition they wanted went all the way to here, and then they had 0 yard for their 4 children. They didn't want that. That's what they were told they could do. So you have to be realistic what you can do and what you cannot do. So a few things. You're not going to be able to replace the window anymore. You could before. You're not. A window is a historic element. They want to save all historic elements. You're not going to be able to replace the window. I mean, it's going to be sheer madness to think that you can replace the window. If it's totally shattered and gone, maybe, but I mean, the relative is you need to tell people, can't change a window, can't change an opening, can't start it. You have to start at 100%. I mean, these are the things that have now gone into play in the historic history. Additions must be subordinate to the original structure. So if you have 1,000 square foot house, you're not going to be able to add 3,000 square feet. That 3,000 is no way going to be considered subordinate to 1,000. 500 is subordinate to 1,000. That's a normal addition.
999?
999 is probably subordinate. When they make an addition,
No, Susan, 998.
there has to be, it's a very hard concept. They want the addition to look like an addition. They do not want you to take a little bungalow and do an addition right here and look like it was seamless. They don't like that. That's against the rule. That's against the National Historic Standards. You have to be able to differentiate the old from the new. So they want this addition to be like right there. It's clear that that's an addition. It has to be delineated. There has to be some difference between the addition and what was original so that you could easily remove the addition and you could always determine what was original and what the addition was. So one way they do that is to modify the siding. One way they do that is the windows are different. If you have 4/4 windows here and your addition has 1/1, that delineates a change. That's the rule. That's how it is. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that's just how the rule is. But you need to know these kind of prevailing deals. You cannot use a district. If you're talking about the heights and you say, oh, the 400 block of Harvard can be considered only the 400 block of Harvard. You can't consider the 900 block of Harvard, or if there's a house up in the 1600 block of Harvard. The context area is the block face of which it's on. So if there's 2 little contributing structures and 19 new houses over there in a vacant lot, you get to compare to the 2 contributing structures. And what you can build has to be in relationship to the context area. So all of a sudden you can't plop this 2-story house where there's a block of only 1-story houses anymore. Because the context area, instead of being the district, is now the block face. You can't compare Heights Boulevard to Harvard Street. They're totally different context areas. One was an unrestricted, commercial kind of environment. The other is residential. So if there's a house on Heights Boulevard that you want to replicate on Harvard, you're not going to be able to get that passed anymore. So I want it to be clear that if you don't know, I do know, and I'm happy to tell you. Yes.
It used to be, as I understood it, that you couldn't change like the first.
In October, that was.
The first 3 quarters. Has that changed now?
Changed in October. October, when the ordinance was modified, yes, you can start at 100% and you can remove the back wall.
Actually, it doesn't really
And
say
the
that, but
windows,
that's the practice.
and the windows in the back wall only,
That's correct.
but not the windows on the side, even if they're at the very back.
And there's always an exception, but yes, that is the prevailing mindset. You can start at 100%. You cannot encroach unless it doesn't diminish the other house. So they did approve one last week or whatever, where they let them come in 5 feet here on this slope deal and go in, and they made it go like this, so you could see the original roof line, and then they were able to take this gable, and they came in 7 feet and go in the old 6 ward. So that let them.
And it has to be smaller than the
It has to be
original
subordinate. So they don't say it has to be smaller, so it has to be subordinate, whatever that means. Most of us would imply that would mean smaller.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be.
It doesn't have to be, and they've certainly approved them, but same thing, we got a ruling from the city attorney this week, says there is no precedent. It doesn't matter what they did last month, the planning commission is able to, there's no precedent set. Every time they vote, there's no precedent.
Every decision they make can be totally subjective.
That's right.
Oh, that's clear.
But it's the rule. So I would have a pretty good feel if there's a possibility of doing something.
Right.
You know, but you just can't look out in the district anymore. Like I said, this house used to look just like this when I sold this house 3 times. I sold it when it looked like this to the builder who did this addition. You can't do this addition to this house anymore. You're not gonna be able to do that. You can start way in the back and do a little
And
addition.
then, just to be clear, in the Northville Heights, you can't build a garage apartment anymore.
Those are deed restrictions. It's the more restrictive of the historic commission or the deed restrictions. So the deed restrictions don't allow for new garage apartments.
Because they used to, they're the ones that are there.
They're grandfathered.
and they-
That's right. That's a deed restriction.
New ones.
Yes, Ms. Beck.
Okay, 2 questions.
Uh-huh.
Okay. First question is, okay, there's a lot in the 1400 block of Alston.
Okay.
Right, it's 50-foot lot.
Okay.
And what can you build? It's empty. What can you build on that?
You can build a lot of things on
But
that.
it can't look like what's beside it. It can't look like.
It
what's-
can.
No, it can't.
It can't.
It can.
Okay, but it can't be a Creole thing, or it can't be.
Yeah, it can't be that's correct. I mean, it has to be a house in keeping with the historical context of the 1400 block of Holston.
And so if they're all bungalows, then they're all bungalows. Or if there's new
No,
construction,
no.
can it be
No,
like?
No, you can't mirror forget the new construction thing. You only compare to what would have been in that context area or the greater context area. So they will let you put a 2-story house where there's only 1-story houses. It has to be in keeping, so you could enlarge the context area for that deal and say, it's typical you would have had a 2-story craftsman style home, and you can probably get that approved.
What, Martin Bungalow is doing usually gets approved without,
They're not too big, if you say
Yeah.
3,000 square feet.
without, going before the commission. That's a shallow.
New construction has a shall approve, that was one of the modifications into the October ordinance. We tried to make it easier to get things where you didn't have to go before the commission. So you can replace a door of a non-contributing structure, you can get that approved right quick. Heiser, I didn't have to go before the historic commission, I removed the vinyl siding and we just replaced what was there. I was able to get an administrative approval on that sort of thing. You don't have to go before the historic commission if you replace rotten wood.
Okay, my second
But
question
for
is,
new, is like what Melissa builds. Look at that, and that's probably a good guideline.
Maybe.
second question, the porch on the back of the historical house.
If it was original, or you'd pull up the Sanborn maps from 1924 and you'd be able to see what was original or not. At the back of the house, you're likely to be able to remove a porch, unless,
Even if it was original.
even if it was original, you could, yeah, you're gonna be able to remove a
Like-
porch and do an addition. Sure.
Okay,
Likely, you're likely.
do they call them camelbacks here?
They do. We had camelbacks were where we started at about 50% and we did those additions. And that's but you're not able to do that anymore since October. Okay, we're sidetracked on some of those things. Just wanted to go over that. Okay, any questions? If you have an historic deal, get with us if you're remotely concerned. I am off to Cuba on Friday. Remember, Cuba does not have the greatest telecommunications system in the world. So, having done it before, this is my general routine, is to be able to go and check in the morning, about 8:30. I'll be able to get onto the internet at the hotel and attempt to try and call here and see what's going on. And I'll be able to check in again about 4:30. I'm not gonna sit there at the business center, Hotel National all day long waiting for a problem to pop up. So Brandon would probably be your first line of questions. Should you have a contract dispute or something, if there's something major, have to wait till 8 or 4:30 or whatever. And, I think you kind of know Rhonda is available to answer any sort of questions out there, so we got this lovely matrix over here again of who does what. So I'm gonna leave it on the island, so if you're unclear, marketing, you can go to Aaron. If you have a technical question, I would go to Rhonda or Brandon. If you have an accounting question, go to Sandra. Mary Ann is available to answer any questions. So I will be gone Friday, traveling most of the day, and back 9 days later on Sunday. So I'll be back in the following Monday or whatever. So
Have a good time.
I will have a good time. Cuba's amazing.
You need to know how to pronounce it though.
Cuba?
Cuba.
Yeah, I'm very white. My accent was never very good with gracias. It was gracias. We want us to start, and we will be getting out some information. We are going to have a very large white linen event. We are going to have the event at 1035 Harvard, my $2.8 million listing at the corner of Harvard and 11th Street. We will have the house, which will be fully air conditioned. It's about 6,000 square feet. We'll be showcasing Brad Smith's 6,000 square foot house next door. We'll have tents and things outside of the 13,000 square foot lot we have adjacent to it. So we're going to have this big event going on over there for White Linen Night, which is August 6th or whatever. So we'll be getting organized on that, but we'll be sending out some information for you to be able to invite all of your clients, anyone you want. We're expecting 400, 500, 600 people over there for this event. So it should be a very fun event.
Tell me the address again.
1035 Harvard.
And is that a pre-party or is that?
We're going to start early, probably around 4, but I'm sure that we'll end up being there till 10 o'clock.
Yeah. I know.
So we'll probably say 4 to 8, knowing that it lasts longer than 8.
Cool.
So, questions in general? We are very happy here to have Doug Bradshaw, did I get that wrong? Here from Appraisal Management to talk to us about everything you want to know about appraisals. So I'm going to turn it over.
Thank you, sir. That was fascinating, actually.
You learned something?
I did. I was sitting there with my jaw on the floor. That's really good information about all the historical districts around here. I've been saying it for years that these appraisers need to be paying attention to people who are on the front lines. You guys know some amazingly intimate details about what goes on in your neighborhood. Appraisers may come from I live all over. I live in Pearland. I grew up there. I worked up in Houston all my life. So there were times when I worked these specific areas. I don't know half about these areas.
Appraisers call me every week on why one side of the street would be have one volume versus the other. One side is in the historic district and the other not. And the lines do zigzag their way all around.
Yes, they do.
You have to know where it is.
You gotta know where it is. And I get questions all the time. As a matter of fact, we were chit-chatting about it before the meeting about what do I need to get to an appraiser, right? Okay, let's handle that right off the bat. Right.
That's information possible.
As much as you can throw at the appraisers, especially if you're working in one of these very specific areas up here in these historic districts where all of this is going on, that I've been out of the field for a year, so I didn't know. There were changes. I don't know. I don't keep up with that. I'm mired in all kinds of other additional regulations that I get to play with now, other than what's going on specifically in these historic districts over here. When you get a chance to get the appraiser's attention, when you got them, hit them. Right? You got all kinds of information you can hit them with. These historic districts, where these lines run, some of them know, some of them don't. They can find these maps relatively easily. Make sure they know, hey, this is in a historic district. We need to stick with comps that are in a historic district. Don't go outside of the historic district and pull comps. Don't do that. You're missing your market. You're missing buyer and seller attitudes. So tell them that. If you get an appraiser like me who goes back into the field after having been out for how many years, and I'm trying to re-educate myself again very quickly and get up to speed, you may get a very highly experienced appraiser who just doesn't know. So tell them. You guys can put together some amazing packages, CMAs. The stuff that I see put together for appraisers is amazing. Get that in front of the appraiser. Leave it on the kitchen counter. Hey, when the appraiser calls, hey, I need to set the appointment. Okay, I'm gonna go buy the property at 10. Okay, hey, listen, there's gonna be a packet on the kitchen counter for you next week, especially today. That's good news.
You're smart.
It's rolling around like a vault. And then the house smells wonderful. The appraiser wants that.
It's gotta be worth it.
It's gotta be worth what our content price is, right? So, yeah, if you can do that, people don't realize how strong the aromatic reaction is when you walk in. I mean, nobody wants to sell or appraise a home where we had, a lot of pets, or maybe we had a smoker. Not that there's anything wrong with that smoker, I could care less myself, but everybody knows you're in business long enough. You walk into that versus you walk into fresh cookies.
Would you seriously add some value because it's all that fresh?
Wow, I'm not sure, I haven't figured it to your judgment, seriously.
We can't get credit for fresh cookies, but you're selling the appraiser. Right? Don't ever stop. You're selling the appraiser too. Don't ever stop selling. And if you get the opportunity to hit the appraiser with something like that, it's curb appeal. It's positive reaction, immediate positive.
Some to a certain elementary school, I mean, they may not know that sort of thing. People will only search for Harvard Elementary. It makes a big difference if you're not Field Elementary.
Yep.
And it makes all the difference in the world. I mean,
Let them know. Let them know. Some simple things that you guys know. Let the appraiser know. They may not know it. They
a
may.
certain builder, I've been able to show comps of just one builder compared to, the masses. And if this builder historically has gotten $25 a foot more because of what they do, then you can show the appraiser this comp for this builder versus another.
That's excellent. You pointed the appraiser in the right direction because of the very intimate knowledge that you have of the market. That's what you guys want to be doing, right? You want to pick your comps, right? When you do your CMA, you want to pick yours and you want to pick your comps in front of the appraiser. You may disagree with the appraiser on which comps need to be used. That happens quite frequently, actually. But give it a shot. Let's try to steer the appraiser in the direction that we want them to go into. Now, they've got rules and regulations that they've got to follow, and if they can't use the comps that you gave them, sometimes that happens. But let's give it a try. When we're selling, the house, let's sell the appraiser also. So I know that's some general vague answers to the question of what do I give the appraiser, everything that the kitchen sink to sell to this person on the direction that we want them to go into, right? Starting with when we walk in the door. There are some crossover elements to how far we go with what information we can give to the appraiser with regards to the appraiser independence requirements. Who's heard of that? Oh, nobody. Dr. Rankin?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Dr. Rankin?
yeah.
Okay, some headlines. That's what's running the show these days. When the federal government loses tens of billions of dollars, how many?
Almost a trillion.
Almost $1 trillion? Okay. When they lose that much money in the mortgage lending business,
And you may have lost a trillion.
that's amazing. I didn't know the number was that high. I know it's a huge number. They don't like that. So they decided they were gonna change a few things and they wrote some legislation and it was not like that. And it regulates the heck out of appraisers. Those are gonna be some of the reasons why the appraisers are gonna disagree with you guys from time to time. Because there's so much regulation now, everything that they do is looked at the microscope. Case in point, the appraiser produces an appraisal, sends it to us at Appraisal MC, and the appraiser's already reviewed the appraisal report once, he sends it to us, and it goes through an additional review step. It hits our initial review team, they look at it. They may go back to the appraiser for additional adjustments, maybe the appraiser missed a checkbox, didn't dot an I across the T. So it goes back to the appraiser, then it comes back to us, and then I look at it. I am the Chief Compliance Officer at Appraisal MC. It's a fancy sounding title, makes me sound way cooler than I actually am, because I'm actually not all that cool. I have the SRA designation from the Appraisal Institute, which is essentially the equivalent of a master's degree in residential appraisal. I wrote a doctoral, like a master's thesis and everything. So we go long production. Took me forever. It's really hard to get. It's a lot of money. These appraisers can't fool me, right? So once it gets through first level review from us, it gets put through me, and then it gets sent on to your mortgage company. Now, there still may be the potential for some mistakes. Everybody's human. These things happen. But this thing is very highly scrutinized now. One of the reasons why is because of the almost $1 trillion loss that the government experienced. One of the other fun little things about Dodd-Frank most people don't know is that now as an AMC, I'm required to turn appraisers into their state licensing boards for any perceived deficiencies. So are investors, right? When it hits next level before it gets to Fannie Mae. So we had appraisers getting turned into their state licensing boards at record numbers. So you guys are gonna run across appraisers who are appraising scared because they don't want to be turned in. Because it's, if they get out of the complaint, if they didn't do anything wrong, but there was a perceived deficiency, it's about 10 months, the process. From the time it starts until the time it ends. It's about 10 months or so. Might move a little quicker. I can tell you a specific example, actually. An appraiser on our panel in San Marcos was doing an appraisal on a pretty difficult property, and that's when it's gonna happen. It was a custom home on acreage out near San Marcos. So it didn't have a lot of comps to pick from. So he used the best that was available, but the investor didn't like it. So they turned him into Texas Appraisal Licensing Certification Board. So the investor was Chase, which is the kiss of death. The first thing that Chase does is they remove you from their good list and put you on their bad list. You hit their exclusionary list. So you can't do work for me anymore at Appraisal MC because you got to be on Chase's good graces. So the first thing I got to do is remove the appraiser. So I got to make a phone call. Hey Patrick, sorry, but I did hit Chase's list. I don't know what to tell you. I can't use you. I got to remove you. Please call me when you get cleared from Chase. So Patrick said, oh, great, that's bad. Okay, thanks, sir. Oh, we're off the phone. So he spends about 2 months writing a rebuttal to the state. He gets that in. They have 3 months whether or not they're going to remove, give him an outright dismissal or escalate him further. He got acquitted right there. So then he contacts Chase and says, hey, Chase, how about putting you back on your good list? I got a full dismissal, no disciplinary action. And Chase says, oh, that's great, but we still want you to take a couple of classes, remedial classes, and then we'll consider it. And that was their exact word, we won't consider it. And he's, oh, I got
We had one 2 weeks ago, appraisers in out. They sent him back out to check something. We were set to close on Friday. He'd already, they did it 3 weeks ago, came back out the week before. On Wednesday before he went on the ineligible Chase's list, and we had to start completely over with a whole new appraisal and everything.
Yep.
2 days before closing.
Yep. And that's something we do weekly. We run these investor lists because we're trying to keep that from happening. Now, that's an unfortunate situation. But if this guy's got, if an appraiser hits an exclusionary list and we're running on a monthly basis, how many more appraisals has this appraiser done for us that we have to pull back and go, oops, sorry, everybody involved, we've got another delay.
Just so I can follow your story, what was it the investors objected to with this guy? What was the presumed malfeasance?
In the appraisal form, the appraisers are required, there's a statement called, something called statement of limiting conditions and appraiser certifications. Item 7 states that the appraiser used the most locationally, physically, and functionally comparables that are most similar to the subject property. They disagreed that he used the most locationally similar, even though there were no better options. Right?
Yeah.
Dude was a very experienced appraiser, and he did everything right. And that's the rub.
So what do you counsel people if they have that situation before?
Oh, from your
A
perspective?
property with no comps, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, From a buyer and seller perspective, when we're getting it listed, or from the appraiser's perspective?
Well, I'm speaking as a realtor.
Right.
I have had listings where there aren't any comps.
I know.
So how do we help you as an appraiser
How do we sell
when
it?
there is?
Yeah,
no-
Yeah, cash buyer. We want cash, that's right.
I hate that word.
You gotta do the best you can to set levels of expectation, right? Once we get to the state, we have no ability to affect any kind of change, but with a house that you're trying to sell where you have no comps, we do appraisals all the time in situations like that, when realtors or folks are trying to set list prices, and they're drawing a blank, and you do appraisal.
How long was the guy on the non-referred?
He got it back on our list to be able to use him in about 9 months.
So he was basically dead for 9 months?
Yeah, he lost 60% of his business. He had to send his wife back to work and send his kids to public school. They're being homeschooled.
All because of
Heartbreaking. That's the saddest story I've ever heard, so I tell them. But there are others that are much happier. But yeah, pretty good.
So if somebody gets handed this and there are no comps, do they come to you, was my question.
From time to time, they'll call me, the appraisers that know me personally, and ask my opinions, especially if it's in Houston, because I've got geographical competency here. And I've hounded these streets just like they did. Sometimes they're just on their own, and they just have to do the best that they can. Yes, sir.
So if you're the listing agent and you're working with the seller and you believe the house to be a difficult house to appraise because of location or size of the house or whatever, would you advise the seller, perhaps you should think about buying your own comp beforehand, so you then have something to talk to the appraiser, or have your own appraisal done, so that you have something to talk to the appraisal coming from the lending company to justify, and you can have some forewarning about lack of comps or inability to find, is that a good strategy for a selling agent?
Buying an appraisal ahead of time.
Have the owner buy their own appraisal separate from the lender.
I thought.
Yeah, I do too.
You said buy.
You said
That's right, that's right. Buy an appraisal.
But
Buy an appraisal. And they're done by a
Well, if it's not coming
Sorry,
from
I
the bank,
misspoke.
it's prohibitively expensive.
They're here. Okay, you're hitting on a good point. Yes, I would suggest, let's get an appraiser's opinion. You're gonna get a snapshot of what's gonna happen on the back end when we're going to get a mortgage, right? There's a couple of issues that you need to consider when you do that. The appraiser's gonna get into that situation and be appraising it from a perspective of the intended use is we're trying to develop an opinion on this price. Right? So when we can't use that appraisal on the backside for mortgage purposes when we get to that point. So it's gonna be useless. So back in the day, you've been around the business for a while, and a thing would happen. You could do that. It is no more. Okay. So be careful when you do that you don't upset them, or get, it's all about using that knowledge to set the level of expectation. Right.
So they can't even look at
Well,
That's what I'm asking.
I don't understand.
like
that
if
why-
it ends up in the folder,
Oh, the appraiser?
the appraisal that you already bought.
Right,
and it ends up in
yeah.
there.
Ends up on the counter.
We're not supposed to.
Okay.
I wouldn't suggest that. We've got the Dodd-Frank, part of the Dodd-Frank Act and those appraiser independence requirements, really strict now. Okay. We used to be able to do that all the time. It was no big deal. Appraisers would share information. Heck, I did it. I'd look up the guy's name and go, hey, what did you think here? Why'd you, and we confer, and it was great. We can't do that anymore, so I'm not gonna tell you yes. I can drop it.
Why is it that the personal appraisal that a seller would get for his home would be so different from the lender appraisal? Because I have recently this situation where my seller came to me with an appraisal. He said, look, I got this appraisal done and my house is worth $550. And his house was nowhere near $550. And then I had to tell him, yeah, your house is really worth like about $445. And he was in shock because this appraiser told him it was worth so much more. And I don't understand why that would happen. When I looked at everything that the appraiser compared it to, all the homes that he was comparing it to were these really beautiful, tricked out homes and mantras that he's like, well, yeah, your house looked anywhere near these. So I had to show him. I opened each one of them up because he just saw the front picture of each one of them, which is what the appraiser showed him. But when I showed him the inside, I'm like, look at this kitchen that's been completely remodeled. Yours needs to be entirely gutted. Look at this, this one has gleaming hardwood floors. Your floors have holes in them. I mean, I don't know where that difference came up, and I'm just wondering, are they always that different when it's the seller buying an appraiser versus appraisal versus a lender is getting?
No,
No?
you don't have a use problem there, you've got an appraiser problem.
Okay.
Is that your place on P?
We
That's just a
Yeah.
pretty It wasn't help the higher level, you just
Yeah.
did that service a lot down. I mean, there are bad appraisers just like there are good appraisers. And that
But I mean, but what do you do? What do you do? How do you, because it affects HCAN, what do you do? I mean, it's like in my neighborhood, where I live, we're a bunch of townhomes, 32 townhomes, I think. And my home is like almost 1,000 square feet smaller than another one, yet my appraisal is higher than the other one.
Are you talking about, wait, are you talking about your HCAN appraisal, or are you talking about?
And that's another
That's different.
appraisal. Yeah.
That's
You
not,
talking about the
that's not
HVAC?
the appraisal he's talking about.
Yeah, HCAN appraisal is a whole different ballgame. That's not what we're
You
talking about.
you need to call
All
me later,
the same thing.
well, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
That's
You-
different.
Yeah, those are separated.
Protest your taxes.
Yeah, protest your taxes.
Protest
Pat O'Connor and Associates is the guy that's got the biggest name in Houston. for
Yeah,
protest.
I use them.
Yeah,
What about that tax homeowner,
okay.
But you know,
There's a batch of them.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so,
not-
but that's all, that's all, let's stay on our,
Yeah.
stay on appraisal.
We have
We
this
need an
valuable
appraiser on the house that the client is buying. The house raised like $53,000 less than the price they're offering. And, we're trying to get a hold of the appraiser. He will not return calls. I mean, you can't get a hold of the guy. You basically. Yeah, I'm almost certain that the discrepancy comes from the fact that we did not leave any cookies in the house. I'm almost certain.
It's all
But I
about
mean,
cookies.
I'm telling you, what do you do? I've got a listing agent, we go to the buyer's side, so I got the listing agent freaking out. He's been trying to get hold of the guy for a week now and send him comparables and talking to the wall.
Was going through personal computer?
No.
That's my question, because if you were,
No, sorry.
okay, here's a topic that I wanted to make sure and bring up. If you're going through First Superior, you're doing something called an ROV. It's commonly referred to as an ROV. It's a reconsideration value. And you're getting me advocating on your behalf, going to the appraiser. If you're going through, yes, sir. If you're going through TAF, you have an issue. You say, TAF, I've got an issue. We think the appraisal value is too low. TAF says, okay, get me a rebuttal package together is essentially what it is. And TAF sends it on to me. I open it up and look at it. And I go, okay, well, from the appraiser's perspective, we need to get rid of this comp, take it out. Let's get rid of this comp and take it out. Let's add maybe a different comp here. Rearrange this information the way it's presented to the appraiser. Right now, we is not being mad at the appraiser. Don't go guns blazing. You're gonna turn the appraiser off. Right? Don't do it. I've seen it and I'm like, ooh, I'm not sending that to the appraiser.
No,
Rearrange and be real sweet and sprinkle some sugar on this, That's the process we're gonna use going through appraisal and see. When you get me, that's one of the reasons why TAF uses us, because he gets me. Because I know when the appraisers have messed up and I can speak directly to them, whereas TAF can't. That's the reason why for that fancy sounding title and all those really cool
I
sounding
mean, can
credentials.
you ask for another appraisal?
Reconsideration.
You can ask for another appraisal, with regards to the appraiser defense requirements, as long as there's three reasons. If, and the main one that we're dealing with for the most part is if the original appraisal was considered to be tainted or flawed, and that's the government's that's the verbiage exactly for the document. If it's tainted or flawed, in other words, if the appraiser messed it up so bad that it's not usable, we take that out, we go to another appraiser. Typically, where we go is we go with the reconsideration of value process. Because now we're selling the appraiser, we're guiding the appraiser. We don't have near as good of a chance as if we had done it on the front end with the cookies and the all that stuff. I wish I was worked up here. I have a feeling you guys are gonna do that. Wish I was feel. The reconsideration of value process, if you guys get to this point and you're turning one in, I'm gonna give you some tips on how to get there. I'm glad you brought this up. It's an excellent segue. Most AMCs will allow 3 comparable sales. You just send 3 comparable sales over. Hey, Mr. Appraiser, we think these 3 comps are better than the 4, 5, 6 that you used in your report already. Would you please take a look at these? We don't allow 3. We allow 4 on paper, our protocol. So we're already a little bit more than the usual AMC, but I'll actually allow 6 to go through. The reasoning is if we had an appraiser who really messed up and they have to rewrite a report, we put the best 6 comps in front of them. Appraisers are usually putting somewhere between 4 minimum comps these days. That's kind of a minimum. Usually it's 5 or 6. So if we put 6 in front of the appraiser, we're saying we need you to rewrite this appraisal, right? So we just hit the appraiser in the pride, right? A lot of these appraisers are private.
Yeah.
Awesome. So when you go at them in these ROVs, we got to be a little careful about how we approach them. If we smash them in the mouth, they're going to turn off on you, and you're going to have much less of an ability to affect a change. You get me running it, you guys send me the information, and I can rearrange it. Like I said, put the trigger on top. Hey, buddy, we really appreciate you looking at this stuff. Oh, by the way, I noticed you missed a condition adjustment with comp 1 because it doesn't have hardwood floors and granite countertops like we do. So you need to give us an upwards adjustment for condition. And this is what I can have that conversation with the appraisers and see tap. That's back in the day.
Well, the good thing too is with First Pure Mortgage, it comes to us first. Like you're dealing with Chase, Wells Fargo, actually a lot of the brokers. That appraisal goes directly to the lender before we even see it. So once that happens, you're just backing up at that point. But we get to see it first, so I can call Doug up and say, hey Doug, what's going on here? Why is the value this? Should be this, or why don't we use these comps? And Doug will jump right on it before it goes to the lender. So that's always helpful. Because once the lender sees it, you're pretty much done.
Before our hands are tied.
Yeah.
We got it. Yeah. When you send us the 4, 5, 6 comps, don't send us pending sales. Appraisers can't rely on it. It's not a closed transaction. It's not a settled transaction. You can include a pending sale in an ROV, but expect it to not be used, right? If you're doing that, you're still selling the appraiser. You're still trying to set the appraiser's level of expectation. Most appraisers know that active listings and pending sales, well, they know that they're not closed transactions, and so they can't rely on them yet. But they all know that they typically set the upper end of value ranges. So if you want to get a fancy look at comp in front of them, you can put that in front of them, but just don't expect it to get used. Now, you put an idea in the appraiser's head about what values are doing in the neighborhood, in the historic district, or anywhere else. So you use that as a tool to put an idea out there, and then hit them with those 3 or 4 or 5 additional closed comparable sales that are at least as good or better than the ones that are in the report, right? You guys price out a home on a price per foot basis? Oh no! Don't the can of worms. Yeah. Simple illustration: when you use that price per foot method to pull a comp to send to an appraiser, and it pings a high price per foot, and you go, well, I want to use it bad. You pull that price per foot and look at the subject property's square footage, and you do the math, and you go, oh, this thing should be $50,000 higher. It won't work like that. The appraisers are gonna kick those out. Here's the scenario. You sell a home that is one of the smaller homes in the neighborhood.
It's gonna
That's-
have a higher price.
It's gonna have a higher, statistically, run the statistics. It happens over and over. And over.
We know that.
Right, so now you pull this high price per foot comp and you try to send it to the appraiser, but it's 500 square feet smaller than anything else he's got in the report. And he goes, I can't use that. And boom, it's gone. And you've wasted a comp in the ROV. Don't waste comps. You only got a limited amount. With other AMCs, you got even fewer than we have. I mean, if you've only got, if heaven forbid you don't use this guy over here, and you end up with a different AMC, who only allows 3 comps, and you want to waste a comp on a listing or a pending sale, then you've only got 2 shots at it. And make them count. Don't waste one on a property that's 500 square feet smaller than the subject, right? With us, you can go ahead and waste a comp or 2, and we'll still get to some stuff. Right? Now is also a time to write you want the appraiser to know anything? You want the appraiser to know that if you used a comp across the street, and you jumped out of a historic district that has restrictions similar to these, and therefore that comp indicates lower value and we messed up. If we didn't get him already, I got him in. Right? And then you tell me that, and I go, ooh, I know exactly what that is. And I call it appraiser, and I think that's no problem. We need to get this fixed. You know, by the way, you do know that if you don't get this fixed, then you do have a use back violation in your report of required by law to serve you the Texas Appraisal License Certification Board.
Yeah, that's lit a fire.
That most of them know that, and you want to talk about the fire. So I can do that. It scares me to death because I'm an appraiser, right? I don't want to turn people in. Nobody wants to do that, but I gotta do it. Required to by law. So those are some, anybody got questions about ROVs and what you can put it in, what you should do?
What does the AMC stand for?
Appraisal Management Company, it's a name for the cottage industry of management companies. The name of my company is Appraisal MC.
Is that basically quality control?
It's quality control, it's, what I do is I keep a panel of appraisers nationwide, actually nationwide. We're in 44 states in the continental United States. We're not in Alaska and Hawaii yet, although I really want us to be there because we need to have a client on site that I have to go visit.
Yeah, right. For Alaska.
Oh,
yeah.
Terry, the AMC is what they went to, was it 5 years ago?
It was Dodd-Frank, yeah, 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2010.
Yeah, so they just got cute and did the appraisal AMC, but
Yeah.
AMC stands for Appraisal Management Company, is what, and that's what we went to back with Dodd-Frank.
Now, are they the ones that assign the appraisers?
Yes, ma'am.
And the lender contracts with an AMC.
With the same.
Well,
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so the lender contracts with an AMC.
Yes.
And they hire the appraisers out. We cannot contact the appraisers or talk to the appraisers.
But you can talk to
Yeah.
because
There's got to be a level of separation.
hire.
The way that they defined it is there's a level of separation between mortgage production staff and appraisal production staff. And so there's this, hey, you guys split. And there's gotta be a middleman in between, and that's where the AMC fits in. And that's, all of these appraisal issues that we're having these days with values getting cut by $2,000. Anybody has value cut by $2,000?
What do you mean about that? Wait.
Yeah.
Value cut, an appraiser's opinion of value comes in lower than contract price by $2,000. There's one. I knew I have one.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's three.
Huh.
See, you have that happen. In the old days, me and Taff would take care of that.
Come on, you can't get $2,000.
Well, it was a.
No, I know, we can't do that anymore.
You can't do that. This portion of Dodd-Frank separated us to the point where we can't do that. that's why it's important for the AMC to have somebody like me, who can liaison between the two groups and tell the appraisers, like, dude, are you really good enough to know that there's a difference between $2,000? Are you that good? I'm not.
On 453 to 455, come on, it's statistically.
Yeah.
The reasons and the part that it is, the statistics, I mean, you talk about such a small, come on, man. I know pretty much everything at one point. I've forgotten more stuff about appraisal than most appraisers know, and I know you're not that good. The reason why you're gonna get stuff like that from time to time is because of that story I told earlier. These appraisers from time to time are scared.
It's like the big things too.
I'll come along and tell them, hey buddy, let's not be scared, let's write a good report, right? And let's realize that we're not quite that good. Right? Yeah. Sometimes I can affect the changes, sometimes I can't. That's sometimes why a really good ROV is really important. Why the information that's in it is of the utmost importance in how you present that to the appraiser. Instead of punching them in the mouth, like I said, we're sprinkling this thing with sugar. Yes, sir.
So for the ROV, is there like a promulgated form you're supposed to use to present that, or do you just hand them a packet?
It would be proprietary with regards to whichever AMC you're using. Like we have one, but it doesn't matter. We can get it from them in any form, and I do it all the time actually. A lot of forms, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It doesn't matter. You get that information to me, and I'll process it and sift it and make sure it's really good information, and then get it to the appraiser. That's only if it's.
Yes.
Man, by the way,
I'm here
sorry.
to tell you that's true.
Yes, sir.
What percentage of those things get turned over statistically?
Get turned over.
Like 0.0000. I've had one and since we've been.
What was your
When you send it in for an ROV, like if you did appraise and you do the ROV, how many of them actually will?
I've had one in 5 years.
Change his mind.
Change.
You see how?
So why do an ROV?
Because you might be that one.
You might be that one.
Because
that
if
makes
you don't,
everybody
you're not
happy,
gonna be that one.
And all the people in the transaction know that you actually tried. I'll do it all day long. I say, sure, we can do that, no problem. No,
Okay, but if you don't try, you're not gonna be that one.
Right. You never know.
You got absolutely no chance if you don't try.
You actually don't know you're fighting your hardest for them, you know?
But the people, the realtors, the buyer, the seller, they don't know how the process works. So you just appease them and say, yeah, sure, we do that, no problem. I know that it's.
I got two.
My end world, and I predominantly focus there, so finance over $1 million required 2 appraisals sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm all, last year, on average, we were all $150,000. It's like, how can you get 2 appraisers looking at the same house and be off by $200,000 on a $2.3 million house? Pretty big difference there.
Well, what
But
did
if I
you
did
do?
all that, oh hell, then they want to average the 2 or use the lower of the 2 or whatever, but they typically want to. Typically, those guys are only financing such a
They're
small
putting
portion, doesn't really
30%
matter.
down
But it's
on
one of the
40%.
few instances where if you really got 2 appraisals, you can be pretty significantly off. I mean, just like running 2 sets of comps with 2 Green King and us can do comps and they're totally different. Appraisals could be the same way. It is kind of interesting, we don't do more 2 appraisals, totally independent, and see how it pans out.
You use the word subjective with describing your description of.
Yeah, beautiful is a subjective term.
Right, okay. So the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, it's an acronym we commonly refer to as USPAT. It's about as subjective as it gets. It's very loose guidelines. They did that on purpose. They could have years ago tightened these things up and really given the appraisers direct roads to go down when they hit certain situations. They didn't do it. That's one of the reasons why we have Fannie Mae regulations, FHA, we go VA. Individual client requirements, there's huge long lists of them out there. That's one of the reasons why you're gonna see differences like that. We have another 2 appraisers go out there, you probably get two different values and 2 different square footages. You know, unfortunately, there's some lacking with regards to some standardization within our industry, and it's an unfortunate headache you guys have to deal with. I deal with it now too, because I'm on the other side of this, I'm weighing two appraisals down and going, well, who's right and who's wrong? Well, both of them and neither of them. And how do I reconcile between these two? Again, that's what TAP calls.
Yeah.
Hey,
All the time.
What's up? Can you fix this? Help me, you know?
Hey, Doug, give them a brief history of your, in the industry, how long you've been in the industry, who you used to work for prior to
Oh, yeah.
AMC.
Yeah, so I got into the business as a fresh green trainee in about 2000. And I started with a small mom and pop in Pearland, literally mom and pop. It was really cool. I stayed with them for about 3.5 years and I moved up to the big city and went to work for Mike Brubaker.
This company though, I switched over to him, to AMC, about 2 years ago now, I think. Yeah. Switched over far superior than Brubaker. One of the main things with Brubaker, he would give you a value to get the value, so everybody's happy. You get to the lender, they would kick it back and say, no, this appraisal sucks. I have not had one appraisal get kicked back with AMC.
I never had anything.
That you honor me by making I say you.
I haven't had one get kicked back for tax. Not even mine. So Brubaker is like every one that we get, not every one, but it's like a lot of them, they get kicked back. Because
I never had one of them in this 18 years.
Wow, thank you for the compliment. That guy was my mentor. He's a big deal.
He's
awesome.
a great guy.
I love Mike. He's a great guy, but they would just try to push these appraisals through and then get to the lender and they just kick it back.
That's probably the additional layers of review, and you're not only getting the appraiser, and he's got a chief appraiser over there who's guy in Montana.
You can pull up that survey, right? I'm gonna do it. Show them one more time. Okay.
But there's an additional layer, and that's probably where that comes from. I mean, I've been on the phone with the folks at Flagstar, so I can get a pretty good idea of what it's one of the reasons why you get stuff that goes through. So
I think your company has, because she's in with, what's her, Mariella,
yeah.
She's in with Mara at Flagstar, so there's some connection there, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think.
And then I pull up the reference city of Houston build line. It's at the city. It's in the planning department. You click down to find it. Okay. We pull up that block. It's by block.